A modern pastry chef awakens inside 16-year-old Baron Chris Jordan after magical poison kills the original boy. His new territory is starving, his peanut harvest is dying, and stronger nobles already treat him like helpless prey. A system offers Battle Aura Awakening if Chris saves the fields using knowledge carried from his former world. He discovers the workers are innocent because nobody on the magic continent understands fertilizer or exhausted soil. Pond mud and wood ash restore the yellowing plants before Hopetown loses its only dependable harvest. Chris pays every laborer 20 copper coins, shocking people accustomed to whips, hunger, and unpaid service. The completed quest floods his body with silver-white aura and transforms the condemned failure into a trainee knight. Before that same day ends, he will use this new chance to protect a bleeding serf from another noble. Only hours earlier, Chris opens his eyes inside a cramped room with cracked furniture and unfamiliar parchment. A violent flood of memories tears through his head until another person's life becomes painfully clear. He has transmigrated into the magic continent, a world ruled by nobles, knights, mages, and magical beasts. The body belongs to Chris Jordan, a young baron sent away after his coming-of-age ceremony. His inheritance is Hopetown, a remote territory with a shabby castle and barely 200 residents. 6 months of poor harvests and crushing taxes have left most families thin enough to count their ribs. Talented children usually awaken battle aura between 12 and 15, then begin training as knights. Chris is already 16 and a half, so his family considers him completely without martial potential. Without aura, even his title cannot protect him from stronger neighbors who steal resources whenever they please. The system therefore changes more than his strength, because it offers him a path towards survival and authority. Its first quest concerns the peanut fields where more than half the plants have turned sickly yellow. Failure will reduce the harvest, deepen hunger, and destroy the territory's already fragile finances. Success will awaken battle aura, the one reward Chris needs before his enemies realize he has changed. Administrator Randall soon enters reporting that the fields continue declining despite repeated punishment. He blames the serfs immediately and claims their laziness has already earned several rounds of whipping. Chris refuses to condemn anyone through assumptions and orders an inspection before further punishment occurs. He leaves with Randall, Chief Knight Jonathan, and 4 first-rank knights carrying worn but serviceable weapons. Jonathan is a broad-shouldered, red-haired warrior whose third-rank aura makes him Hopetown's strongest defender. Chris rides the territory's only horse while every armed follower walks beside him through dusty roads. Thin workers drop to their knees whenever they recognize the young lord approaching from the castle. Their fear feels heavier than respect because each lowered head expects another command or punishment. The terraced peanut fields cover nearly 14 acres across the slopes beyond the settlement. Yellow leaves spread through the crop like fire, threatening everything the workers planted during spring. An elderly serf named Old John rushes from a straw hut and kneels before the group. Torn clothing exposes fresh whip marks across his back, proving Randall punished him before investigating anything. Randall kicks the trembling old man and accuses him of neglecting the Baron's most valuable field. Old John insists he waters every section weekly and removes weeds and insects 3 times daily. Chris stops the abuse, dismounts, and examines a damaged leaf with his own hands. Randall protests because nobles supposedly should never touch soil meant for peasants and servants. Modern experience makes that custom seem useless, so Chris ignores the administrator's anxious complaints. The pale leaves resemble plants suffering from serious nitrogen deficiency rather than neglect or disease. Chris asks when the field was last fertilized, but nobody understands what the word means. Old John only knows watering, weeding, and crushing insects before they spread through the plants. The problem is not laziness, because the workers simply lack agricultural knowledge that Chris once considered basic. Farmers here plant seeds, pray for favorable weather, and abandon exhausted land when production collapses. Chris orders routine labor stopped and divides the territory into 2 temporary work groups. One group must dig nutrient-rich mud from the pond beside the damaged fields. The others must gather wood ash from cooking fires and burn additional dry branches. Both materials will be mixed and buried throughout the soil around every peanut plant. Randall and the knights spread the instructions through Hopetown while workers assemble in confusion. Nearly 140 residents begin digging, hauling, mixing, and covering the terraced ground. By midday, every section receives the crude fertilizer despite blistered hands and exhausted shoulders. Chris then orders Randall to pay each worker 20 copper coins for the emergency labor. The administrator stares at him as though the young baron has suddenly lost all reason. In this world, serfs owe their labor automatically and receive only enough food to remain alive. Chris argues that starving people cannot maintain fields, defend territory, or offer genuine loyalty. He also refuses to build his future upon suffering when fair payment can strengthen everyone. News of the wages spreads faster than the original work order across the entire settlement. Exhausted workers straighten their backs, clutch their coins, and praise a lord who finally values their effort. The system confirms the quest's completion before warmth surges through Chris's chest and limbs. Silver-white energy coils above his palm, bright enough for Jonathan to sense from several steps away. Chris has awakened battle aura and officially entered the trainee knight stage in a single afternoon. With practice, he can become a true first-rank knight and finally defend his own title. Jonathan's shock turns into fierce excitement because a strong lord creates opportunities for every subordinate. Military victories could expand Hopetown, raise the family's status, and reward loyal knights with land. For the starving residents, their lord's awakening becomes the first believable sign that circumstances might improve. Chris returns to the castle where maid Ruth Sandy serves a simple steak with silver utensils. Even an impoverished noble eats with silver while common families outside cannot afford enough grain. The contrast hardens Chris's decision to change Hopetown instead of copying other aristocrats. He rests briefly and accepts that returning to his former world is probably impossible. Urgent knocking wakes him when Ruth reports another crisis developing near the eastern border. Baron Anthony Hughes has entered Chris's territory and is tormenting one of Hopetown's serfs. Anthony is a first-rank knight who repeatedly humiliated the powerless original Chris during the past 6 months. He has taken supplies, forced concessions, and treated Hopetown like an extension of his own land. Chris mounts immediately and orders Jonathan to lead the group toward the confrontation at full speed. During the ride, Jonathan explains that a serf approached one of the trees marking the border. Anthony claims the man crossed onto his territory while relieving himself beneath the branches. He now intends to execute the worker because one foot allegedly touched forbidden ground. Noble law gives each lord exclusive authority over the serfs living inside his territory. Killing another noble's subject is therefore a calculated insult rather than ordinary border enforcement. Anthony wants witnesses because humiliating Chris publicly matters more than punishing the frightened worker. A crowd already surrounds the trees when Hopetown's riders arrive beneath the afternoon sun. Anthony stands in expensive clothing while the accused serf hangs bleeding from a thick branch. Deep whip marks cover the man's body, and each breath escapes as a weak groan. Chris dismounts and demands that Anthony explain why someone from Hopetown is being tortured. Anthony dismisses the injuries and insists that trespassing gives him the right to kill. The hanging serf protests faintly, but Anthony strikes him again across the swollen face. One misplaced foot has become an excuse for cruelty, intimidation, and another attack on Chris's authority. The original Baron would have lowered his head because Anthony's aura made resistance seem suicidal. The modern soul inside this body has never tolerated bullies, even when victory seemed uncertain. Chris orders Anthony to release the serf immediately and end the spectacle before everyone. Jonathan and both groups of knights freeze because the old Chris never showed such defiance. Anthony throws several silver coins at Chris's feet and claims he is purchasing the man's life. Chris refuses the money because accepting it would confirm that his people can be bought and abused. He repeats the order with enough force to silence the watching crowd around the border. When Anthony laughs again, Chris commands Jonathan and the knights to draw their swords. Each side possesses 1 third-rank knight and 4 fighters at the first rank. Anthony himself adds another first-rank combatant, giving his side a clear numerical advantage. Chris recognizes the danger yet charges before hesitation can weaken everyone standing behind him. Jonathan eagerly meets Anthony's third-rank knight after suppressing months of humiliation and anger. Anthony releases battle aura and strikes Chris directly, confident that a trainee cannot withstand him. Their fists collide, sending Chris backward several steps, while Anthony moves only half that distance. The result proves that awakening alone cannot erase the gap created by years of training. Anthony grabs a branch as a weapon and advances with a smile, already anticipating victory. Chris abandons noble etiquette because survival matters more than appearing graceful before frightened spectators. Sand explodes into Anthony's eyes before Chris tackles him violently into the dirt. The refined duel becomes a savage struggle where teeth, nails, and desperation replace formal swordsmanship. Chris claws Anthony's face, bites his ear, and refuses to release him despite repeated punches. Blood fills his mouth while 5 deep scratches open across the neighboring noble's cheek. Every knight stops fighting because nobody has ever seen a baron attack like a cornered animal. Anthony screams for assistance, abandoning pride when he realizes Chris will not retreat voluntarily. The 2 third-rank knights finally separate them before either young lord suffers permanent damage. Anthony's ear bleeds heavily, his face is shredded, and his expensive clothing hangs in dirty strips. Chris carries swollen bruises but remains upright while spitting blood onto the grass. Anthony calls him a madman who lacks the dignity required of a nobleman. Chris answers indirectly through a cold warning that another invasion will end much worse. Rage overwhelms Anthony until he stammers helplessly and collapses unconscious before his own men. His knights carry him away without challenging Jonathan or risking another humiliating confrontation. Chris orders the wounded serf cut down before the man's remaining strength disappears. Jonathan severs the rope and the victim drops to his knees while identifying himself as Dean. Chris gives Dean the abandoned silver as compensation for his injuries and interrupted work. The practical explanation hides compassion while preserving Dean's dignity before the watching residents. As Chris rides away, Hopetown serfs praise the Lord who defended one powerless worker. Protection means more than promises to people who have always been treated as replaceable property. Ruth gasps when Chris returns with dark bruises covering much of his face. He reassures her that Anthony looks considerably worse and will need much longer to recover. Medicinal wine burns across his cuts, while Chris studies the weakness beneath his apparent victory. Dirty tactics worked once, but true strength still separates him from neighboring enemies. Anthony may return with weapons reinforcements or a better plan after his injuries heal. Chris must reach the first knight rank before revenge arrives at Hopetown's border. The system interrupts his thoughts with a quest concerning an unexpected guest entering the territory. Proper hospitality will earn a reward, yet the message does not identify the visitor. Chris sends Jonathan and 2 knights to patrol roads, fields, and settlements before nightfall. Evening arrives without reports of strangers, unusual animals, or suspicious movement near the castle. After dinner, Chris studies possible businesses because Hopetown's remaining money will not last. Every idea requires materials, knowledge, or tools unavailable within his isolated and impoverished territory. Near midnight, a gray-robed figure appears silently inside the doorway of his private study. Chris knocks over a chair before recognizing the clothing commonly associated with wandering mages. The visitor lowers her hood and introduces herself as Tina, an injured young woman seeking shelter. She appears around 19 with pale skin, large eyes, and wavy brown-gold hair. Tina needs approximately 3 months to recover and wants food safety and a room. Chris understands the request, but refuses to support a stranger without receiving something useful. Tina senses magical power inside him and offers instruction that could make him a magic warrior. Such fighters combine battle aura and magic, dominating ordinary opponents at the same rank. Their weakness is slow advancement, because every day of training must be divided between 2 disciplines. Chris rejects the offer because becoming permanently mediocre in both paths seems unnecessarily dangerous. Tina responds by placing a silver ring with a yellow gemstone upon the table. The spatial ring contains 100 cubic units divided among 10 separate storage compartments. A small amount of battle aura opens the item and stores objects without physical weight. Chris tests the treasure, recognizes its enormous convenience, and accepts Tina's proposed arrangement. He then asks why a wandering mage selected his poor castle instead of wealthier estates. Tina reveals that she secretly observed his actions throughout the entire day. She watched him spare old John, repair the fields, and reward exhausted workers. She also witnessed his savage fight against Anthony to rescue the injured Dean. Among hundreds of nobles, Chris is the first she has seen treat serfs as actual people. Had he arrived one day later, the original baron would probably have driven her away. Tina suddenly takes his cup, examines it carefully, and discovers magical poison inside the remaining tea. Green-scale snake venom mixed with blue-eyed lizard saliva creates a colorless and instantly lethal toxin. The original Chris drank it unknowingly, died alone, and created the opening for transmigration. Chris searches inherited memories but finds no certain clue identifying the person responsible. Anthony seems suspicious, yet a weak living neighbor benefits him more than an unexplained corpse. Tina explains that preparing the poison requires only the ability of a first-rank mage. Placing it unnoticed inside the castle likely required someone around the third rank. A capable enemy has already entered Chris's home, studied his habits, and escaped without detection. Tina refuses to reveal her own rank, answering his concern with an unreadable smile. Chris gives her the room beside his because a nearby mage offers protection against another attempt. That night he circulates battle aura repeatedly while lying awake beneath the castle's leaking roof. A sharp internal crack sounds as energy suddenly surges through every muscle and bone. His skin becomes hot and red while his physical strength rises several times over. In one day, Chris breaks through from trainee to a genuine first-rank knight. Then a second current appears cool and fluid instead of hot and forceful. Water-like magical energy gathers above his left palm beside aura swirling around his right. The breakthrough awakens both paths, making Chris a first-rank magic warrior without Tina's instruction. The system upgrades and unlocks reputation as a direct method for future advancement. Expanding territory, defeating enemies, and earning loyalty will now generate measurable reputation points. Once enough points accumulate, Chris can advance without years of divided martial and magical training. The system removes the greatest weakness that normally prevents magic warriors from reaching higher ranks. Chris can pursue both disciplines and perhaps accomplish something nobody on the continent has achieved. Morning brings dry white bread and greasy milk that local nobles consider expensive luxuries. To someone from a modern city, both taste unpleasantly raw, stale, and difficult to swallow. Chris remembers that his former career involved running a dessert shop as a pastry chef. That experience may solve Hopetown's financial problems more effectively than complicated inventions. Before he can experiment, butler Robert drags maid Kina into the dining room. Kina kneels with tangled hair, tearful eyes, and a fresh handprint across one cheek. Robert reports that she stole 30 silver coins from the household's nearly empty treasury. Her younger brother needs treatment, and the original Chris previously refused an advance on her wages. Noble law allows execution, so Robert recommends hanging her as a warning to others. Chris refuses to destroy a hard-working servant over a desperate attempt to save family. He allows Kina to use the money, which will be deducted gradually from future pay. 20 lashes remain because compassion does not erase the theft or the need for discipline. Kina's relief produces 5 reputation points, revealing how the new system responds to gratitude. Chris tests the mechanism by increasing Robert's monthly salary from 8 to 10 silver coins. The butler contributes 2 more points, confirming that sincere appreciation fuels the system. Robert then explains that Hopetown has enough money and food for only 1 month. The harvest remains 3 months away, leaving a dangerous gap between survival and starvation. Chris decides to improve breakfast while searching for a larger financial solution. He requests eggs, sugar milk bowls, and simple utensils from cook Mrs. Ellen. Familiar hands separate egg whites, whip them into foam, and blend the ingredients carefully. The mixture thickens into sweet cream with a rich flavor unknown in this world. Spread between pieces of bread, it transforms an unpleasant breakfast into satisfying food. Chris shares the remaining bowl with every servant working inside the small castle. Ruth tastes first, and her delighted expression immediately gives him 2 reputation points. The others crowd forward, each contributing more points while scraping the bowl completely clean. 10 points from one simple dessert reveal a connection between food, happiness, and advancement. Chris now possesses 17 points toward the 2,000 required for the second rank. Ruth insists that even wealthy city nobles have never tasted anything comparable. Her praise gives Chris the business idea that hours of frustrated planning failed to produce. He can sell cream, earn money, spread Hopetown's name, and gain reputation simultaneously. Chris empties a hidden chest containing the territory's final 30 silver coins. Jonathan leaves one knight guarding the castle and brings 3 others toward Mott City. The nearby city has towering walls, crowded streets, and noble households seeking new luxuries. Chris rents a modest shop for 5 silver coins and sends the knights for ingredients. They return carrying eggs, milk, sugar, wooden basins, spoons, and disposable paper bowls. Every knight begins cracking eggs and whipping whites beneath the young baron's impatient direction. Their stamina produces smooth cream within 15 minutes, enough for approximately 80 servings. The ingredients cost 15 silver coins, leaving almost no protection against another failed decision. Chris names the product Snow Cake because its white surface resembles untouched winter snow. He initially charges 50 copper coins and waits confidently beside the newly arranged stall. Nobody stops even after Jonathan awkwardly advertises with a voice far quieter than his body. One young man approaches, hears the price, and leaves without tasting anything. Chris lowers the price repeatedly, yet passing customers continue ignoring the unknown dessert. The cream begins melting while his first business venture approaches humiliating and expensive failure. At 10 copper coins, Baron Raymond finally purchases one bowl almost entirely from curiosity. Raymond carries it home where his 10-year-old daughter Sherry has refused food for 2 years. Doctors and mages cannot explain why the dangerously thin child no longer wants to eat. Alone in the dining room, Sherry notices the white dessert and cautiously tastes it. One bite becomes several until the starving girl finishes every trace inside the bowl. Raymond returns, sees cream around her lips, and realizes his daughter has eaten willingly. Overwhelmed, he gathers silver coins, more than 20 servants, and curious neighbors before rushing outside. The system grants Chris reputation from Sherry and Raymond moments before their crowd appears. Chris rises from his failing stall as more than 100 people approach together. Raymond demands every remaining bowl, but Chris restores the price to 2 silver coins. He explains that the earlier amount was only a first customer trial rather than the true value. Chris also limits purchases so more individuals can taste the product and generate reputation. Raymond reluctantly accepts 5 bowls and reserves another serving for Sherry the following day. The crowd surges forward after learning that snow cake made the sick child eat again. 75 bowls disappear within half an hour, producing 150 silver coins. Customers contribute 75 reputation points while excitement spreads throughout the surrounding streets. Chris passes 100 points and completes the system's 3-day reputation challenge immediately. The reward is an epic magical material known as the Dragon Eye Stone. A black vortex opens inside the shop surrounded by threads of flickering purple lightning. A white stone marked by red veins falls out, resembling an eye watching from his palm. Chris cannot identify the Dragon Eye Stone, so he hides it safely inside the spatial ring. He gives each knight 2 silver coins for helping produce and sell the successful dessert. Their gratitude adds 8 reputation points before Jonathan returns the heavy bag of earnings. His first business attempt has transformed from disaster into enough money to protect Hopetown. They close the shop and begin riding home before the afternoon light disappears. During the journey, Chris organizes the territory's next stage of survival and development. Personal strength remains essential because magical beasts, bandits, and hostile nobles surround every road. His subjects grant more reputation than strangers, making their welfare strategically valuable as well. Snowcake provides income, but one sweet product cannot support the territory forever. Chris plans fruit jam, juice, wine, and orchards using knowledge from his pastry career. Growing fruit locally would create wages, food industry, and reputation through one connected system. While considering those possibilities, he removes the Dragon Eye Stone for another inspection. Jonathan suddenly warns him about a robed figure standing motionless upon a nearby hill. Dark mist circles the stranger's body while the evening wind pulls at black fabric. Jonathan immediately recognizes the markings and movement associated with a dangerous dark mage. Ordinary mages seem eccentric, but dark practitioners are infamous for murder and forbidden experimentation. The stranger laughs after spotting the Dragon Eye Stone resting inside Chris's exposed hand. His confidence vanishes when he recognizes the supposedly dead Baron of Hopetown. The mage cannot understand how Chris survived the magical poison prepared for him. Chris finally faces the hidden murderer responsible for the original Baron's death. The enemy is Blake, and he wants both the epic stone and Chris's life. Jonathan draws his sword while 3 knights form a defensive circle around their lord. Blake releases black smoke that condenses into 4 twisted creatures with glowing red eyes. A 2-headed purple snake stretches longer than 15 meters across the road. Another monster combines an eagle's head, a lion's body, and enormous black wings. A wolf-headed humanoid carries a spiked club beside a massive boar covered in scales. Jonathan attacks the snake while the other knights engage the remaining unnatural beasts. Chris dismounts because he is no longer the defenseless youth Blake poisoned in secret. His first-rank magic warrior power now faces its first genuine struggle against death. Jonathan's blade sparks against the serpent's scales without opening a meaningful wound. One tail strike sends the 3rd-rank knight crashing violently across the dirt. The other fighters struggle desperately against creatures stronger than normal animals or trained soldiers. Blake rides a black whirlwind directly toward Chris while raising a half-meter wand. Jonathan leaps to intercept him, but a dark shield stops the descending sword completely. A sphere of corrupted magic follows, forcing Jonathan to dodge before the snake lunges behind him. Thick green vines suddenly burst from the earth and seize both serpent heads. A young mage stands several dozen meters away with her wand extended toward the battlefield. She appears around 16 with a round face and a two-leaf badge. The emblem identifies her as Linda, a second-rank mage specializing in plant magic. Seeds scatter from her fingers and become thorned vines within moments. Repeated strikes tear bloody holes across the trapped snake's armored body. Blake casts demonization, swelling the creature while dark purple vapor pours from its wounds. The bleeding stops and the enhanced serpent fights Jonathan and Linda simultaneously. Blake turns away from his monsters and focuses entirely upon the young Baron. Black lightning tears from his wand, missing Chris by less than a single step. The spell strikes a boulder and shatters solid stone into flying fragments. Blake closes the gap, expecting a noble with little combat experience to panic. Chris grabs the wand, yanks hard, and drives one knee into Blake's stomach. The dark mage flies backward while his primary weapon spins across the road. Chris breaks the wand over his knee before Blake can recover or cast again. Blake produces another wand from a spatial ring, revealing careful preparation for emergencies. Chris kicks it away before even one spell can form at the tip. Without a wand, Blake loses the range and control that made him dangerous. Silver-white aura surrounds Chris as he attacks with a relentless storm of punches. Bone cracks beneath repeated impacts, while Blake's face swells beyond recognition. Several ribs break, leaving the dark mage unable to breathe or defend properly. Jonathan throws his sword across the battlefield after recognizing the decisive opening. Chris catches it in mid-air, reverses the blade, and drives it through Blake's chest. Hot blood splashes across his face as the murderer collapses with lifeless eyes. The system grants 20 reputation points for defeating the assassin who killed the original Baron. Every summoned monster screams before melting into dark puddles beside the blood-stained road. Chris drops briefly to one knee while his heart pounds against his bruised ribs. Blake's silver spatial ring remains untouched upon one stiffening finger. Chris removes it and discovers 10 compartments containing materials, books, food, and horrifying experiments. 6 spaces hold transparent jars filled with green liquid and severed animal parts. A horse torso, canine head, and other pieces continue twitching despite their separation. Chris nearly vomits before emptying every container onto the ground away from his companions. Linda explains that splicing magic combines different animals into obedient artificial monsters. Blake created the 4 creatures through this forbidden practice and tied their lives to his. Linda searches the remaining items and discovers 4 gray soul crystals among the materials. Each crystal can capture a magical beast through a master-servant contract. The bound creature can enter the crystal and emerge whenever its master requires assistance. Chris keeps 3 crystals and gives Linda 1 as payment for her timely help. He then presents the Dragon Eye Stone and asks her to identify it. Linda's eyes widen because the material is rarer and more valuable than expected. Craftsmen need it when forging epic-level magical equipment with extraordinary properties. Chris claims he merely found the stone, carefully hiding all evidence of the system. Linda's plant magic immediately suggests a use for her talent far beyond roadside combat. She can accelerate crops and turn young saplings into mature fruit trees within days. Chris offers the Dragon Eye Stone in exchange for 6 months of service. Faster agriculture is worth more to Hopetown than one unused magical treasure. Linda accepts immediately and follows the group toward the territory with visible excitement. She admires the soil and causes several flowers to bloom beside the road. Chris becomes certain that recruiting her will transform Hopetown's economy and food supply. A guard meets them at the castle with another report concerning Anthony. The battered neighboring lord has returned to the border after only 1 day. Bandages cover his body, especially the ear Chris nearly tore apart during their struggle. Anthony demands a formal one-on-one duel to repair his pride and public reputation. Chris accepts before the challenge finishes, surprising everyone gathered between the territories. Silver-white battle aura surrounds him as he reveals his first-rank advancement. Anthony's men stare because such progress normally requires several years of training. Their lord needed 4 years to cross the same distance Chris crossed overnight. Jonathan throws over a sword, while both nobles move into position beneath the sunset. Anthony charges first with his blade raised and killing intent openly visible. Chris blocks the descending strike as sparks scatter through the evening air. Memories from the original body's childhood lessons guide his grip stance and footwork. He forces Anthony's weapon upward before kicking him hard in the stomach. Blood touches Anthony's lips as both men release their full battle aura. 2 silver figures face each other, while the surrounding knights watch in tense silence. Chris attacks with wide, aggressive swings that drive his opponent backward across the border grass. His aura extends beyond the sword, creating a glowing blade longer than 2 meters. Anthony's clothing tears as shallow wounds appear across his arms, shoulders, and chest. The neighboring third-rank knight warns that his lord still possesses a formal battle skill. Chris has learned no established technique since reaching the first rank. Anthony releases Green Lotus sword art as green-tinted aura blooms around his body. The incoming attack carries enough force to kill an unprepared first-rank knight immediately. Under mortal pressure, Chris recalls martial arts scenes from films watched in his former life. Movements that once looked fictional become suddenly clear, practical, and physically achievable. His body shifts automatically, while silver afterimages spread across the ground. Battle aura gathers into the shape of a coiling dragon around his extended arm. Anthony's knight collapses in disbelief because Chris has created an original battle skill. Noble families normally spend centuries refining techniques guarded more carefully than treasure. Chris drives one palm forward and releases 18 dragon-subduing palms. A silver dragon crashes directly into Anthony's blossoming green lotus. The lotus shatters while the dragon continues through several defensive magical items. Necklaces and bracelets become barriers that break one after another under the impact. The weakened dragon finally strikes Anthony and throws him through the air. He lands coughing blood while his sword spins far beyond his reach. Chris rushes forward and places cold steel against Anthony's exposed neck. The defeated noble immediately abandons pride and desperately seeks a way to negotiate. His knight argues that noble law forbids killing another titled lord without proper cause. Chris has no intention of execution because that would create a larger political crisis. He instead threatens a permanent injury that the law does not clearly forbid. Anthony's terror becomes visible when he understands exactly which part Chris intends to damage. As a second son without inheritance rights, Anthony holds limited value to his family. His household may not risk revenge if he survives and merely suffers humiliation. The third-rank knight quickly offers money to prevent the threatened punishment. Chris initially demands 3 gold coins as compensation for repeated aggression. Anthony calls the amount robbery, so Chris immediately increases it to 5. Silence follows because further complaints might raise the ransom again. Chris gives them half an hour before additional penalties begin accumulating every 10 minutes. Linda grows thick vines that bind Anthony from his shoulders to his ankles. The captured noble finally notices that Chris has recruited a mage into Hopetown. His knight runs toward Anthony's estate and returns carrying a heavy black chest. 3 gold coins rest inside beside silver and a large quantity of copper. Even after counting everything, Anthony lacks the complete 5 gold payment. Chris forgives the final 5 silver coins and stores the remaining fortune. The system unexpectedly grants 5 reputation points from the humiliated prisoner. Anthony is somehow grateful because Chris spared a tiny fraction of his remaining money. The strange response reveals another possible method for earning loyalty through controlled fear and mercy. Chris releases Anthony after taking nearly every valuable coin inside the chest. The original Baron suffered similar extortion from the same neighbor many times. Recovering that wealth feels less like robbery and more like delayed repayment. Darkness covers Hopetown when Chris finally returns to the castle. Robert and the servants wait anxiously beside the gate for news about the duel. Chris announces that every household servant will receive 2 additional silver coins monthly. Their celebration produces 16 reputation points from 8 grateful workers. Robert begins warning about expenses until Chris reveals Anthony's heavy money bag. The butler immediately understands that the territory is no longer completely bankrupt. Chris orders a bonfire feast to celebrate becoming a first-rank knight and magic warrior. News of the overnight advancement leaves every servant speechless with disbelief. Even legendary holy knights rarely progress from trainee to first rank in one day. Congratulations and admiration add more reputation before dinner begins in the courtyard. Linda receives a guest room while Mrs. Ellen prepares the castle's remaining meat. Firelight fills the courtyard as roasting food spreads a rich smell through the night. Chris seats servants, knights, and mages together around one large stone table. Tina and Linda meet for the first time beneath the warm orange glow. The gathering feels less like a noble household and more like a genuine family. Robert raises wheat ale to honor Chris's advancement and the territory's improving fortune. Singing and dancing begin as distance between nobles, servants, and soldiers slowly disappears. After the feast, Linda retires because alcohol and travel leave her completely exhausted. Chris and Tina climb to the castle's highest floor beneath a clear night sky. Hopetown lies mostly dark below them, marked by only scattered household lights. Tina admits that the peaceful territory feels free from suffocating noble traditions. She also reminds Chris that most residents remain hungry and dressed in patched rags. Chris promises to change that reality and build a territory worth living within. Tina believes him because his actions already separate him from hypocritical aristocrats. Chris asks her to begin teaching him magic despite rejecting the idea previously. Reputation advancement removes the slow growth weakness that once discouraged training in both paths. Tina tells him to reach the first mage rank before discussing serious instruction. Chris answers by releasing clear magical power with a casual movement of his fingers. Tina steps backward, stunned that he advanced from weak sensitivity overnight. Their original arrangement covers only 3 months of room and food inside the castle. Chris extends the agreement by offering to fund Tina's magical experiments afterward. Safe access to noble-funded materials makes the proposal difficult for her to reject. Tina accepts, creating another powerful alliance inside the small and vulnerable territory. A black pigeon with orange eyes suddenly flies through the open window. Tina identifies the bird as another creature created through forbidden splicing magic. A narrow tube tied to its leg contains a written threat from Blake's companions. Tina checks the message for poison before allowing Chris to examine the paper. The warning confirms that an entire organization knows Blake died at Chris's hands. One word reveals the true danger because the enemy is not a solitary mage. The group knows Chris's identity, his title, and the exact location of Hopetown. Chris explains the roadside battle and the poison that killed the original Baron. Tina concludes that Blake first targeted Chris, then returned after seeing the Dragon Eye Stone. Killing him has transformed one hidden assassination into a much wider blood feud. Chris worries Tina may withdraw rather than inherit the danger attached to his castle. Instead, she promises to help fight any dark mages who attack Hopetown. Relief replaces his anxiety as their partnership becomes deeper than a temporary exchange. They agree to begin magical training the following morning after breakfast. Tina first demonstrates a basic fireball and explains how imagination shapes magical energy. Chris channels power through a wand and creates the spell immediately. He throws it into an empty field, leaving a scorched crater in the earth. Most beginners require days or months, yet his first attempt succeeds without correction. Chris imagines lightning next and shatters a distant boulder with a blue arc. A wind blade follows, cutting smoothly through a tree trunk thicker than a bowl. Tina watches 3 successful spells appear within only several minutes. Her own teacher praised her for learning Fireball after 3 full days. Chris has surpassed that achievement while discovering 2 additional elements independently. The attacks consume 1/5 of his magic, suggesting approximately 15 total casts. Each spell could overwhelm dozens of trainee knights before they reached striking distance. Tina finally reveals that she is a 4th-rank mage capable of destroying a small town. Chris accepts her instruction but refuses to address someone barely older as his teacher. After exhausting his magic, he announces another plan that surprises everyone inside the castle. Every resident will receive free bread and meat porridge from the household's remaining stores. Robert spreads the announcement while hungry families gather carrying chipped bowls and wooden cups. Adults receive porridge and 2 breads, while each child receives 1 portion of both. Several residents nearly cry after discovering real pieces of meat inside the steaming food. Every person contributes reputation, producing more than 200 points from 1 shared meal. A little girl named Vivian accidentally spills porridge across Chris's robe. Her terrified mother kneels immediately, expecting severe punishment for the innocent mistake. Chris only warns the child to walk carefully and gently pinches her cheek. He promises Vivian that Hopetown will someday enjoy food even better than this. The child's trust and her mother's relief create another small wave of reputation. A deafening roar suddenly rolls across the territory after the meal ends. Tina identifies the sound as an evil dragon spreading destruction near the border. Chris takes the green steel sword and gathers every available combatant around him. Tina, Linda, Jonathan, and 3 first-ranked knights follow him toward Anthony's land. A 30-meter black dragon burns fields beneath 4 enormous wings and curved horns. A silver-armored knight battles it alone while Anthony watches his crops disappear in flames. Jonathan estimates that the stranger has reached at least the 6th knight rank. The juvenile dragon currently possesses 5th-rank strength, but carries the soul of a 9th-rank creature. Anthony orders his injured knight to redirect the monster toward Hopetown's border. Chris recognizes the scheme and waits until the dragon crosses onto his territory. Noble law now makes anything killed upon his land legally his property. Tina believes their combined strength can support the mysterious 6th-rank warrior. Chris charges with sword and wand while every companion follows through the smoke. Lightning strikes the dragon's head, but his blade cannot penetrate the black scales. Linda binds its limbs with vines thicker than a grown man's thigh. Tina rises into the air and summons a violent storm of concentrated magical power. The storm peels scales from the dragon, exposing several raw and bleeding patches. The silver-armored knight smashes its skull downward and creates a deep crater. Jonathan and the others attack exposed flesh before the beast can recover. The dragon breaks free and sweeps everyone aside with its spiked tail. Chris flies more than 10 meters before crashing painfully into the ground. The 6th-rank knight answers with heavenly blazing slash and a golden energy blade. The dragon forms black power between its horns to oppose the descending attack. Golden light cuts through the sphere and opens a bloody wound across its skull. Instead of retreating, the wounded beast tears 3 deep holes into its own chest. Its blood wraps around the body as a rare berserk state transforms the battlefield. Crimson energy erupts outward and turns fields, trees, and stone into scorched ruins. Shields crack, wands break, and several 1st-rank knights collapse unconscious from the blast. Anthony celebrates from safety while Chris's battered group struggles to stand. Chris gathers his remaining aura and forms the Silver Dragon battle skill. The real dragon unexpectedly crouches, covering its head and trembling beneath the technique. 18 Dragon Subduing Palms carries a natural suppression that terrifies dragon blood. Every surviving fighter recognizes the opening and releases the strongest attack still available. The silver dragon strikes its skull while magic and swords tear through open wounds. The berserk state collapses, leaving the creature weakened and barely conscious. Chris drives the green steel sword through the damaged skull and ends the battle. The system awards 300 reputation points for delivering the final blow. The 6th-rank knight introduces himself as Count Ford of Silent Ridge. Ford removes the dragon core and leaves the entire remaining carcass to Chris. He also invites the young Baron to seek assistance in Silent Ridge someday. Tina explains that the fangs can become magic-conducting weapons for a magic warrior. The scales hide tendon horns, claws, and meat all possess enormous value. Anthony watches helplessly because he pushed the dragon onto Chris's territory himself. Jonathan then notices red scales growing where dragon blood touched Chris's hand. Nobody else reacts to the blood, proving the strange change belongs only to him. The system orders Chris to collect the blood and bathe within it. Completing that quest will unlock a new ability called Dragon Human Form. Hopetown's residents watch their lord return beside the enormous dragon carcass. Their amazement adds more than 100 reputation points during the journey home. Servants drain the remaining blood into a large wooden bathtub on the 3rd floor. Chris enters the warm liquid and watches red scales spread across his submerged body. When he awakens, horns, claws, and small wings have transformed his appearance. His strength rises sharply, and fire gathers naturally around his fingertips. The system confirms dragon human form and an increase of roughly 50% in combat power. The transformation consumes aura and magic, limiting its duration to approximately 5 minutes. Outside, a massive horse begins drinking dragon blood collected from the battlefield. Scales, small horns, sharp fangs, and magical power appear across the animal. Chris realizes the creature carries dormant dragon lineage within its unusually muscular body. The horse kicks with enough force to drive him backward more than 10 steps. It can also form fireballs, matching a 1st-rank magical beast in combat. Chris activates dragon human form when the animal attempts to escape. He catches and crushes an incoming fireball before landing upon its back. One controlled punch knocks the powerful horse unconscious without killing it. Linda helps bind its soul into one of Blake's captured crystals. A master-servant connection forms, and the horse finally accepts Chris as its rider. Flames burst beneath its hooves as it reaches astonishing speed across the territory. Chris names the dragon-blooded Mount Dragon and stores it inside the soul crystal. He next inspects the dragon parts packed throughout the castle basement. 2 long fangs will become a sword capable of conducting both aura and magic. Claws and smaller teeth can equip a future squad with exceptional weapons. Thousands of thick scales resist direct strikes from the green steel sword. Dragon skin and tendon promise nearly impenetrable armor and a devastating bow. That evening, everyone who fought receives roasted dragon meat at Chris's table. The meat strengthens their bodies and slightly improves the knight's battle aura. Chris reaches 837 reputation points toward the second rank. Later, he destroys another spliced bird spying from a courtyard tree. Tina reveals that Blake belonged to the Edmund Society of Dark Mages. The organization contains more than 100 members and several dangerous leaders. Edmund himself is a 5th-rank dark mage who controls a 6th-rank dragon. Tina estimates that Chris has approximately 1 year before their full retaliation arrives. She suggests leaving the Eagle Kingdom, but Chris refuses to abandon Hopetown. He declares that the Edmund Society will be destroyed before it destroys his people. Tina promises to fight beside him and eliminate every magical spy nearby. Surviving the coming war requires stronger allies, money, equipment, and rapid development. The following morning, Chris takes Tina and Linda back toward Mott City. Wind magic produces snow cake several times faster than manual stirring. Returning customers gather quickly until a city guard squad breaks through the line. Their leader is Howard Hughes, Anthony's older brother and heir to a Viscount title. Howard claims the stall blocks traffic, but his true concern is lost business. His family's red date cakes cannot compete with the new dessert's popularity. Howard thrusts his spear forward, yet Chris stops the weapon with one hand. Dragon meat and dragon form have raised his strength near the 2nd knight rank. Tina launches Howard through the air when he refuses to end the confrontation. Seeing her 4th-rank mage badge sends him fleeing without another threat. Snowcake sells rapidly, while Chris takes Linda toward the Eastern Plant Market. They purchase apples, pears, oranges, and grapevines for Hopetown's future orchards. Linda also notices a magical black seed disguised as a worthless family heirloom. Chris buys it for 5 copper coins before the seller understands its value. At the market, he encounters his older brother, Brent Jordan. Brent brings Chris and Linda to the Jordan family's Viscount Manor. Their grandmother welcomes Chris warmly and assumes Linda may become his future wife. Cousin Plato arrives carrying expensive snow cake without knowing Chris invented it. Linda exposes the truth, including the enormous profit hidden behind the secret recipe. Chris then presents 10 pounds of dragon meat as his grandmother's gift. Plato refuses to believe Chris helped kill a dragon or became a magic warrior. A duel begins on the family training ground before the gathered household guards. Chris uses lightning, fire, wind, and swordsmanship to control the early exchange. Plato's peak 2nd-rank strength eventually drives him backward with relentless attacks. Chris activates dragon human form, transforming fearlessly before his stunned relatives. Red scales and wings multiply his strength until Plato can no longer push him. An enormous fireball breaks Plato's defense and throws him across the field. Chris wins decisively, proving Linda's claims before the entire Jordan household. He then takes 1 dragon fang to Daniel, the family's mid-level blacksmith. Extreme heat reveals a residual dragon soul still hidden inside the material. Daniel explains that successful forging could create a weapon with its own spirit. Chris quenches the fang with dragon blood drawn directly from his transformed body. The hostile soul gradually accepts him before returning peacefully into the fang. Daniel begins more than 10,000 hammer strikes, while Chris returns to his grandmother. During lunch, dragon meat restores strength and produces admiration from his relatives. His grandmother reveals that Chris's mother died from complications during his birth. Their father became emotionally distant because grief destroyed much of his warmth. She gives Chris a red, heart-shaped pendant preserved as an ancient family heirloom. Strange energy inside the gemstone pulses in perfect rhythm with his heartbeat. Back in Hopetown, Chris plants the mysterious black seed with Linda's help. His dragon blood causes it to become a mutated magical sentinel tree. A golden-veined leaf lets Chris observe the surroundings through the tree's vision. Branches can create child trees, forming a hidden surveillance network across the territory. The mutation also gives the tree firepower equal to a 1st-rank mage. During another dragon bloodbath, the family pendant activates above Chris's head. He enters a vivid ancestral memory upon a fortress wall higher than 100 meters. Inside the vision, Chris inhabits an enormous red dragon also named Jordan. Jordan battles an invading army beside a powerful blue dragon named Lisa. Enemy black dragons capture Lisa after using the siege as a deliberate distraction. A magical formation binds Jordan while his companion is carried helplessly away. Chris awakens believing the vision belongs to an ancient dragon linked to his bloodline. His dragon form has grown taller, stronger, and capable of briefly lifting into flight. He begins planting orchards near a lake abandoned because of a magical crocodile. More than 140 workers follow willingly because Chris pays them fairly. An iron-armored giant crocodile emerges after taking pork suspended above the water. The workers drag it ashore using a giant hook and Linda's reinforced vine. Its armor resists ordinary swords, forcing Chris to expose the softer underside. Wind magic lifts the beast while repeated blades tear open its vulnerable belly. 18 dragon-subduing palms flips it before Chris pierces its skull. Public victory wages and crocodile meat generate hundreds of reputation points. Linda accelerates every sapling until 40 acres become organized young orchards. Later, her sealed dragon tongue fruit energy suddenly erupts beyond control. The pressure swells her body and sends life energy bursting across the castle grounds. She bites Chris's hand, takes in his blood, and transfers the dangerous power into him. The prolonged contact frees Linda from the seal and greatly upgrades his dragon form. Embarrassed by what happened, Linda hides while Chris returns alone to Mott City. Daniel finishes the dragon fang sword, releasing a roar that shakes the entire city. The weapon flies willingly into Chris's hand and communicates through a mischievous spirit. Every swing releases a soul-shaking roar capable of stunning nearby opponents. Chris names the sword Dragon's Howl before commissioning dragon-scale armor. The armor's hidden soul also accepts his blood and recognizes him as master. Returning home alone, Chris is surrounded by 8 armed roadside bandits. 2 are second-rank knights, while the remaining 6 possess first-rank strength. Dragon's Howl conducts lightning better than a wand and kills the first attacker instantly. Dragon fights independently, crushing and burning several enemies without Chris's direction. Dragon human form allows Chris to overwhelm both leaders and pursue every survivor. He kills the entire group because they threaten the only road into Hopetown. 2 blonde siblings later inspect the battlefield and identify an exceptional magic warrior. They are Dway and Manda White nobles who remember the original Chris as weak. Manda once rejected his childhood affection because he possessed no battle aura. When they meet again, she attacks unexpectedly to test his transformed strength. Chris initially dominates using Dragon Lightning Firewind and Dragon's Howl. Manda reveals third-rank power and releases a dangerous skill called Void Flash. Chris survives by combining his Aura Dragon Fireball Flight and layered defenses. The attack drains him completely, but proves he can endure a serious third-rank technique. Daniel soon completes Unbreakable Chris's Dragon Scale and Dragon Skin armor. The suit assembles itself, grows with dragon form, and repairs damage automatically. Dragon's Howl and Unbreakable circulate energy together and improve Chris's constitution. Back at Hopetown, another armored crocodile drags a worker into the lake. Chris rescues the bleeding man, then dives underwater using whiskers formed by dragon transformation. He discovers a smaller female crocodile guarding more than a dozen eggs. Dragon's Howl tears through her defenses until she emerges barely alive upon the shore. Linda proposes healing the mother and converting the lake into a crocodile farm. Workers dig narrow channels that provide water without allowing the adult beast to enter. The recovered crocodile carries every egg back into her underwater nest. Hopetown now possesses a future supply of armored hides, meat, and magical cores. Over the next several days, Linda's magic matures every fruit tree in the orchards. Apples, pears, grapes, and oranges fill branches that were saplings days earlier. Chris teaches selected workers how to cook fruit and sugar into smooth jam. The recipes require no magic, allowing ordinary residents to operate production lines. 8 rotating flavors promise income, employment, and continuing reputation for the territory. Brent visits and barely recognizes the happier, healthier people living in Hopetown. Children play openly while workers carry water without overseers threatening them with whips. Residents praise Chris for fair wages, free meals, and protection from magical beasts. Brent tastes apple jam first and becomes eager to discuss a business partnership. He insists he hates pears and would rather starve than touch pear jam. 10 seconds later, he eats it happily and contributes another reputation point. Brent tries grape and orange flavors until every jar seems equally difficult to abandon. Chris takes him through orchards filled with healthy trees and almost no damaged fruit. At the irrigation channel, 2 newly hatched crocodiles appear beneath the clear water. Chris explains that the surviving mother and her offspring now form a controlled magical farm. 1 adult hide can sell for 12 gold coins, while a core may bring 15. The lake provides food naturally, making future production almost free after basic protection. Brent proposes investing, but Chris refuses because the crocodiles are strategic military resources. Their hides will armor an elite knight squad preparing for the Edmund Society. Their magic cores may strengthen fighters before the Dark Mages attack in 1 year. Chris even feeds the hatchlings small amounts of his blood to accelerate growth. The young crocodiles swallow every drop and seem to enlarge before Brent's eyes. The mother watches from the lake while remaining safely beyond the narrow channels. Brent leaves impressed and promises to discuss distributing Hopetown's jam in Mott City. Chris perfects regular and lightly sweetened versions of apple, pear, grape, and orange jam. Selling only one flavor each day should prevent customers from growing bored too quickly. That matters because snow cake sales are already declining as the novelty disappears. A competing merchant, Baron Leverett, begins promoting pineapple buns through aggressive discounts. Customers receive strawberry buns and copper refunds for choosing his products. Chris is close to 2,000 reputation, so any interruption now becomes especially dangerous. He answers with a promotion nobody in this world has ever experienced. Chris cuts more than 1,000 tickets into matching numbered pairs. Magic-infused water marks every genuine ticket and prevents ordinary ink from copying it. Customers receive one free lottery chance whenever they purchase a jam sandwich. 30 third-place winners will receive bowls of snow cake from Hopetown. 10 second-place winners will receive jars of freshly prepared apple jam. One grand prize winner will receive half a pound of genuine dragon meat. The announcement freezes the nearest customers before excitement explodes across the street. Ordinary residents have never expected to see dragon meat, much less possess it. In the capital, 1 pound can sell for a full gold coin when available. The meat also strengthens bodies and improves the battle aura of trained knights. People swarm the stall convinced that one inexpensive sandwich may change their lives. Chris tears each ticket in half and drops one matching piece into the drawing box. News spreads across Mott City faster than any advertisement messenger or public announcement. Crowds abandon neighboring stores and pour toward Hopetown's stall from every district. Baron Leverett watches his own customers disappear in less than half a minute. His brother returns carrying a ticket and explains the unfamiliar lottery system. Leverett immediately devises a plan to forge matching numbers for every valuable prize. Multiple counterfeit winners could force Chris to surrender several portions of dragon meat. Refusing them publicly might also destroy Hopetown's reputation and credibility throughout the city. Leverett believes the scheme is perfect because the handwritten tickets appear simple. He does not know that magical water has already marked every genuine pair. Dwayne and Manda notice another citywide commotion forming around Chris's business. Manda wonders how the former weakling obtained enough dragon meat for a lottery. Dwayne connects the prize with Dragon's Howl and Chris's self-repairing armor. Half a pound means little to someone who clearly controlled most of a dragon carcass. The siblings attempt to buy tickets but find every nearby street already blocked. Thousands of citizens press forward convinced that fortune may choose them before supplies vanish. Snowcake's fading novelty is replaced by jam gambling excitement and the promise of dragon meat. Chris stands behind the stall while silver coins and reputation begin rising together. Leverett prepares counterfeit tickets without realizing his fraud has already been defeated. More customers arrive from distant neighborhoods as rumors race beyond the central market. The White siblings push through the crowd but cannot reach the counter before sandwiches sell. Hopetown's name echoes across Mott City through every argument, wager, and excited prediction. By the time Dwayne and Manda reach the street, more than 10,000 people have gathered. Chris's first lottery ends this portion with Mott City packed around his stall and Leverett secretly preparing a doomed counterfeit scheme.